Suddenly the judge's gavel slammed down and echoed like a gunshot through the packed courtroom. But what happened next stunned everyone. This is a courtroom, not a daycare. Judge Ronald Barkley roared, pointing his gavel directly at the teenager standing at the defense table. The boy couldn't have been more than 17. Slender, calm, dressed in a plain suit a sizes too big, his hands clasped behind his back like a soldier at attention. The crowd of attorneys, reporters, and spectators whispered with contempt. Some chuckled, others shook their heads. A biker sitting in the front row with a tattooed neck suddenly slapped the table, laughing. "Yo, this little punt thinks he can argue law." The room exploded with laughter, but the boy never flinched. He looked the judge dead in the eyes. "Your Honor, may I proceed?" The laughter died. Silence. Judge Barkley leaned forward, mocking. "What are you? Some TikTok intern doing legal cosplay?" But before another chuckle could escape the room, the door burst open. Bam! The tension shattered. In stepped a man in black. Tactical boots, all-black suit, an earpiece, and eyes that scanned the room like a laser beam. Everyone's neck snapped toward the aisle. "Who the hell is that?" the judge snapped. The man didn't answer. He approached the boy and handed him a sealed black envelope. The boy opened it, read silently, then handed it to the judge. The judge's face went from arrogant to pale in under 3 seconds. He dropped the envelope like it burned his hand. What is this?" he stuttered. The boy's voice was quiet but cut through the air like a blade. "That, Your Honor, is federal clearance. I'm not here as a student. I'm here as lead defense counsel." Silence. Complete and total silence. The biker's jaw dropped. One of the court clerks gasped, and somewhere, deep inside the system, fear was beginning to spread, because this wasn't just a courtroom prank. This was the beginning of something much, much bigger. The courtroom doors hadn't even closed behind the stunned onlookers when Judge Barkley ripped off his robe and stormed into chambers, his hand trembling as he held the sealed document. Outside, chaos rippled across the courthouse like wildfire. Reporters were already shouting into microphones. Social media exploded with hashtags like #TeenLawyer and #CourtroomReckoning. But inside the courtroom, the silence round the boy was unnerving. The biker who had laughed earlier now sat stiff, eyes wide, as if staring at a ghost. The defense table, once seen as a joke, now felt like a war command center. The teenager, whose name hadn't even been spoken yet in court, calmly sat down, opened a thick leather folder, and started flipping pages while murmuring quietly to himself. A young clerk leaned toward a prosecutor and whispered, "Who is he?" The prosecutor, red-faced and sweating, responded, That kid's name is Elias Wood. I thought it was a prank. He's not even on the state bar, but that clearance, that's federal. That's Black Cobra level. That name, Black Cobra, it wasn't just any agency. It was whispered in federal circles, feared in international law, and known for training operatives not with weapons but with words, logic, and the ability to manipulate systems like puppeteers. The courtroom murmured with tension. Elias stood. "Again, Your Honor," he said firmly as Judge Barkley returned, his eyes twitching with something no one had ever seen from him before, doubt. "I would like to proceed with the suppression motion." The judge's voice cracked. Motion. Granted. And that moment marked history. Because what followed wasn't just a legal argument. It was a masterclass. Elias walked to the center of the courtroom without a single note in hand. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, "you were told my client, 26-year-old Samuel Briggs, broke into a government server farm. You were told he confessed. That evidence was overwhelming. That this is open and shut. But none of you were told That the so-called confession was recorded 42 minutes before the actual arrest and that the entire process was illegal. You weren't told that the warrant used was backdated. And worst of all, you weren't told that the lead investigator in this case has been under internal review for planting digital evidence on more than one occasion. Gasps filled the room. Elias raised a flash drive. This contains an altered data logs and internal email leaks. Every claim I make today will be supported not with speculation but with raw digital truth. Judge Barkley tried to interrupt, but Elias had already handed the flash drive to the court technician. As the screens flickered on, showing time-stamped files, metadata, and a string of manipulated IP records, the entire court leaned forward. The prosecutors looked like ghosts. One of them knocked over his water. Elias's voice never rose above calm. If this was a fair trial, I wouldn't be needed. But this isn't about justice. It's about burying the truth beneath bureaucracy. And I don't bury things, I dig outside. Hundreds now stood on courthouse steps watching live feeds. Former federal agents tweeted, "Who the hell trained this kid?" Retired judges whispered into phones, "Is Barkley losing to a teenager?" And somewhere, watching remotely, the director of Black Cobra leaned back in his chair, nodding, "Good. Elias, good." Back inside, the judge had no choice. The evidence presented is overwhelming and deeply troubling. The motion to suppress is granted. All confession evidence is inadmissible. Elias sat down slowly, as if bored. Meanwhile, the prosecuting attorney slammed his briefcase shut and stormed out. The biker who mocked Elias earlier now looked shaken, and the crowd silent. Everyone watching knew they had just seen something bigger than a win. They had seen a takeover. But this wasn't the end. Not even close. Because as the judge called for a recess again, Elias leaned toward his client and whispered something only caught on hot mic. "They'll come after us tonight. Be ready." That single line ignited a media frenzy. People were glued. Who was Elias? War. Why was Black Cobra involved in a small federal case? Was this case a trap or bait? And most importantly, if a teenager could do this in court, what else was he planning? The air outside the courthouse was electric with tension. Reporters surged forward like wolves the moment Elias stepped onto the marble steps, flanked tightly by the two Black Cobra operatives, Agent Crane on his left, a former NSA codebreaker with a stare like stone, and Agent Vera on the right, whose gloved hands twitched subtly at her sidearm. The crowd's roar felt like a stadium just before a riot. Microphones were shoved toward Elias's face, cameras clicking in machine gun rhythm, people shouting his name. But Elias didn't flinch, didn't blink. He just stared ahead, focused, calculated. His voice came low, but deadly clear. "Justice isn't a system. It's a fight, and I came here to win." The crowd erupted, half in awe, half in outrage. Protesters waved signs, some calling him a hero, others demanding his arrest. Police formed a perimeter. Meanwhile, in the shadows, across the street, a man in a black SUV watched everything through high-resolution binoculars. His gloved hand clicked a transmitter. "Confirm movement. Initiate tail. I want eyes on Ward at all times." But Elias already knew, as the SUV pulled away to follow him. He spoke without turning his head. "You've got 5 seconds to lose. Then, I want the drop team ready." Crane nodded once, tapped his earpiece, and gave a single word: "Execute." Just like that, the game changed. The next few hours unfolded like a cinematic thriller. As Elias was ushered into a decoy van, 2 identical lookalike surgically altered Cobra decoys took his place and drew the tail down a trap route into a secure lockdown district. Meanwhile, Elias and his real team were already deep underground. moving through an abandoned Cold War tunnel system beneath the city, toward a forgotten archive vault. "Why here?" Vera asked, eyes scanning every corner with a soldier's paranoia. "Because the judge isn't the target," Elias replied calmly. "Neither is the court. They never were. The case is a front. What they're really hiding is proof of Project Helix," Crane stiffened. "That's declassified myth," Elias looked up. "Then explain why I found fragments in federal case files dating back 17 years, everyone involving Alta. Ed confessions, wiped DNA, and accidental deaths during transport. The silence that followed was heavier than the concrete walls around them. At the heart of this so-called courtroom drama was a silent war, and Elias Ward wasn't just fighting it. He was dismantling it from the inside." The team reached Vault C13, a blast-proof steel room with a biometric triple lock. Elias stepped forward, pressing his palm against the scanner. A click, then a hiss. The door opened and inside lay stacks of yellowed files, sealed case boxes, and one old steel locker chained with military-grade padlocks. Elias opened it slowly, revealing not papers, but VHS tapes, actual tapes marked with dates, case numbers, and government seals. "These," Elias said, "are suppressed testimonies. Dozens of victims, all silenced. Every one of them connected to the same underground experiment using juveniles in staged trials to cover real operations." Vera's voice trembled. This isn't just a corruption case. This is mass manipulation." "Exactly," Elias said, "and we're the first ones to ever have proof." He began loading the tapes into a hard case while Crane set up the satellite uplink. Time was running out. Every second counted, because someone, somewhere, knew what Elias had just uncovered, and they were coming to erase it all back on the surface. The court case was unraveling in real time. Prosecutors had vanished. The judge went into protective custody. News anchors started on live air, and sure what they were allowed to say, the nation was waking up, and somewhere. In a luxury penthouse far above the chaos, a man in a white military jacket watched Elias on a screen. His face was expressionless, but his voice was death. "Activate Ghost Protocol. Kill Switch Priority 1. The boy dies tonight." Across the city. Sleeper agents activated. Power grids flickered. Cameras jammed. Phones died, and in the tunnels beneath, Elias looked up from the upload screen. "They're here." Crane drew his weapon. Vera hit the lockdown switch. But Elias just picked up the last tape and whispered, "Let them come. I've waited 10 years for this." The lights flickered once. Then all hell broke loose. What followed was chaos wrapped in choreography. Agents in black dropped through ceiling shafts like shadows. Crane opened fire, dropping to before diving behind steel crates. Vera took 3 to the chest, kept moving, gunning down another at point blank. Elias ducked, rolled, slid across the floor, and slammed the hard drive into the secure port. 4%. The screen blinked, "Upload in progress." But they were surrounded. Elias was calculating every angle, memorizing fire patterns, calculating escape odds. His brain ran faster than any air system. "We have exactly 11 seconds to breach and exit," he called out. "Or we're buried." A wall exploded behind them. Smoke choked the room. Crane yelled, fall back now." But Elias didn't move. He stared at the last video on the screen, showing a teenager in court, a boy just like him begging for someone to believe his confession was fake. "This ends now," Elias growled. He grabbed the hard drive, slid it into a bulletproof case, and sprinted toward the secondary exit. Vera covered him, taking another hit, but didn't fall. They broke through the emergency hatch just as a final charge detonated behind them, collapsing the entire archive. The screen cut to black. Seconds later, a news station received an encrypted email. It contained everything, every tape, every file, every crime, and a final message. Justice is no longer blind. It sees everything now. As the world stared in stunned silence, Elias Ward disappeared from the public eye. But this story wasn't over. Not even close, because as Chapter 3 ends. In a dark surveillance room buried beneath Washington, D.C., a holographic figure stares at Elias's photo and says, "He's not done, and neither are we." Activate Phase 3. Find his weakness. 3 weeks vanished like smoke. But the world hadn't stopped shaking. Leaked tapes flooded newsrooms, courts across the country, reopened closed cases, headlines screamed of corruption, cover-ups, and kids turned into pawns. Overnight, public trust in the justice system crumbled, protests exploded, judges resigned, an emergency hearing convened in D.C. under federal lockdown. Yet in all that chaos, one face was missing: Elias Wood. No one had seen him since the underground assault. He'd become a ghost, a myth. But myths, when real, don't disappear. They calculate, they prepare, they strike. And on the night of the federal hearing, when every top official, prosecutor, and surviving member of Project Helix stood in a secured courtroom surrounded by armored guards, he came back. Not through the front door, not in disguise. He came in plain sight. The courtroom had changed. Triple security, full media blackout, phones confiscated, no live feeds. But at exactly 9:04 a.m., the courtroom lights flickered once, then again. The judge paused. Power issue? He asked. Then the screen behind him flashed to life. No one had touched it. No remote, no cue, just static, then a voice, calm, steady, recognizable. "Good morning." "Your Honors," gasps echoed. Every person turned as a video feed of Elias filled the screen. Not a photo, not a recording. Live. Somewhere, watching, speaking directly to them. You locked down your courtroom. Thought secrecy would protect you. But justice doesn't happen in darkness. The judge slammed his gavel. "This is an illegal hack. Shut it down." But the screen didn't budge. Elias's eyes didn't blink. You tried to bury the truth under paperwork and protocol. But the world saw every lie, every fake confession, every stolen life. The system broke itself. Now it answers to us. The courtroom locked down instantly. Panic rippled. The screen changed, displaying real-time footage of every judge's private communications, emails, audio, texts, all linked to Helix, project files, payments, death orders, cover-ups. Who is feeding him this? A prosecutor barked. Where is this coming from? But no one could answer, because the feed wasn't from a laptop. It was routed through over 60 servers across the globe run by whistleblowers. Former agents, rogue journalists, Elias, had built a network of believers, trained them, armed them with knowledge, and today wasn't just a broadcast. It was a trial. Outside the courthouse, crowds had already gathered. Giant projectors displayed Elias's face across buildings. Every word he said now echoed through megaphones in 40 major cities. "I asked for truth. You gave me lies. I asked for justice. You gave me silence. I was mocked, humiliated, dismissed because of my age. But knowledge doesn't care how old you are, and neither does the law." The screen split, showing pre-recorded testimony from every victim Helix buried. Some wept, some screamed, some showed scars. The final clip was Elias himself, years younger, in a juvenile cell, whispering, Into event camera. I'll come back for you. All of you, the world saw, and the world raged. Inside the courtroom. The judge screamed for system shutdowns. U.S. Marshals burst in. Find him, someone shouted. But Elias's voice cut through again. You think I'm hiding? Then, from the back of the room, a door opened. Silence swallowed the room, and there he stood. Elias Ward, in person. No disguise, no weapon. Just truth. I'm right here. For 3 full seconds, the most powerful courtroom in America stood frozen. Elias stepped forward. This isn't your courtroom anymore. This is mine. He approached the center. No guards stopped him. No one moved. I'm charging every member of this court under citizens' authority for conspiracy, obstruction of justice, and crimes against humanity. I bring evidence, testimony, and witnesses. Let the trial begin. The judge rose, red-faced. You can't do this. But Elias turned to the crowd. Watch me. Then the doors opened again, and in walked 30 people, former agents, surviving victims, disbarred attorneys who'd been ruined for speaking out, and finally, Director Lorne of Black Cobra. The room lost all sound. Lorne spoke with gravity. The boy is correct. Black Cobra authorizes this proceeding. The court has failed. Today, justice resets for the next 6 hours. The court heard evidence like never before, crimes exposed, bank records traced, whistleblowers testifying with voice tremors and shaking hands. But Elias stood calm, unbroken, like a conductor guiding the orchestra of truth. He tore apart every defense, every lie, with surgical precision. By sunset, the final verdict was in. The court found its own members guilty. The gavel dropped not from the judge but from Elias himself. Sentence is passed. Justice has spoken. As the courtroom emptied, Elias walked alone up the main doors into the dying light of day. Reporters tried to approach. Cameras rolled. But he raised a single hand and said, "This was never about me. It was about you, the people. Don't wait for a justice. Become it." The crowd parted as he walked through. No guards, no walls, just respect and fear. Because now, the world knew Elias Ward wasn't a myth. He was the new order behind him. Black Cobra agents sealed the courthouse. New judges were appointed. Trials reopened. And across the world, new voices rose. Young, bold, smart, trained. Like Elias, he wasn't the first, and he wouldn't be the last. But as the final shot of the story fades, Elias stands alone on a rooftop, watching the city breathe below. Vera steps up beside him, blood still on her shoulder. "It's done," she says. Elias shakes his head. "No, this was just the first verdict. The system doesn't need lawyers anymore. It needs warriors." He turns, walks into the darkness, and the screen fades to black. Text appears. "If they mock you, stand taller. If they silence you, speak louder. And if they bury the truth, be the one who digs it out." Elias Wood.